My name is Victoria Hayes, and I'm 35 years old. I'm the CEO of Hayes & Associates, one of the top consulting firms in New York City. I built this company from nothing, pouring my entire life into it. I'm talking 80-hour weeks, sacrificing relationships, friendships, everything. Now I have it all. The corner office with a breathtaking view. The penthouse apartment, the kind of success most people only dream about. And yet, I am completely, utterly alone. It's a strange paradox, isn't it? To have everything you ever wanted, and still feel like you have nothing at all. My last assistant quit 3 months ago. In her exit interview, she said I was impossible to work for, too demanding, too cold, too focused on work. And you know what? She wasn't wrong. I've been through 12 assistants in just 5 years. A revolving door of bright-eyed hopefuls who thought they could handle the pace. None of them could keep up. The truth is, my standards are unforgiving because that's what it took to get here. I expect the same level of dedication from anyone on my team. So far, no one has measured up. That's why I was so skeptical when HR sent me Daniel Cooper's resume. My HR director, Sarah, came into my office, holding the single sheet of paper like it was either a winning lottery ticket or a ticking time bomb. He's 28, she started, her voice cautious. Graduated top of his class from Columbia, speaks 4 languages, and has absolutely incredible references. I waited for the but. There's always a but. But Victoria, she continued, he's young, very young, I scoffed. Sarah, I don't care how old he is. Can he do the job? That's the only question that matters. Sarah hesitated. On paper, he's perfect. More than perfect. But you know how it is with some of the younger candidates. They don't always have the stamina for your schedule. She was being diplomatic. What she meant was, they couldn't handle the relentless pressure, the last-minute flights, the weekend work. They wanted work-life balance, a concept I long since abandoned. I glanced down at his photo attached to the resume. Dark hair, piercing blue eyes, and a genuine smile that probably charmed everyone in his interview. He looked like he should be on a beach somewhere, not chained to a desk in a high-pressure corporate environment. But there was something in his eyes, a flicker of determination that intrigued me. Send him up, I said, my voice clipped. Let's see if he can handle it. 10 minutes later, Daniel Cooper walked into my office. And I have to admit, the photo didn't do him justice. He was tall, maybe 6'2", with an athletic build that even his perfectly tailored suit couldn't completely hide. But it wasn't his appearance that caught my attention. It was his eyes. They were intelligent, observant, and completely unfazed by the intimidating corner office or the woman behind the desk who had a reputation for making grown men cry. There was no nervousness, no hesitation. Just quiet confidence. Miss Hayes, thank you for seeing me. His voice was smooth, and his handshake was firm, confident. No clammy palms, no weak grip. A good sign. Sit, I instructed, gesturing to the chair opposite my desk. You have 3 minutes to tell me why you want this job. Go. I'd seen this simple command make most candidates panic, their carefully rehearsed answers flying out of their heads. But Daniel didn't flinch. He just smiled. A small, knowing smile that was both respectful and surprisingly bold. Because you're the best at what you do, he began, his gaze steady, and I want to learn from the best. I know your reputation. I know you're demanding. I know your last 12 assistants couldn't handle the pressure. I'm not them. The audacity. I raised an eyebrow, leaning back in my chair. Bold words for someone who's never worked a day in this industry. What makes you think you're different? He didn't miss a beat. I grew up working in my family's restaurant in Queens. 16-hour days, no breaks, constant chaos. My mom ran that place like a military operation, with an iron fist and an even sharper tongue. Compared to her, Miss Hayes, you'll be easy. For the first time in a very, very long time, I almost smiled. Almost. The image was so unexpected, so far removed from the polished Ivy League resume in front of me. This wasn't just another privileged kid looking for a stepping stone. There was grit there. I decided to push him one last time. This job requires extensive travel at a moment's notice. Late nights are the norm. Weekends are not your own. Your entire life will revolve around my schedule. There is no off switch. Are you still interested? I laid it all out, the unvarnished, brutal truth of the position. No sugarcoating. If he was going to run, he run now. He simply leaned forward slightly, his blue eyes locking with mine, and asked, "When do I start?" I was taken aback by his directness, by his complete lack of hesitation. "Monday," I said, my voice sharp. 6 a.m. sharp. Don't be late. He stood, his movements fluid and efficient, and shook my hand again. "I'll be here at 5:45. And with that, he turned and walked out, leaving a strange silence in his wake. A few moments later, Sarah poked her head in, her expression a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. "Well," she whispered. I looked from the empty doorway back to Daniel's resume on my desk. A ghost of a smile finally touched my lips. "We'll see," I said, the words hanging in the air. "We'll see if he lasts a week." For the first time in a long time, I felt a flicker of something that wasn't boredom or annoyance. It was curiosity. And I couldn't wait for Monday to arrive. Thanks for watching. Be sure to follow for the next part of the story. First impressions? Well, they're not always right, are they? I've built my empire on being a step ahead of everyone. My standards are impossibly high, which is why my assistants usually have a shorter shelf life than a carton of milk. So, when Daniel walked into my office, all bright-eyed and earnest, I gave him a week tops, just another casualty in the making. But Daniel lasted a week, then a month, then 3. He was infuriatingly, astoundingly good at his job. It was like he had a direct line into my brain. He'd anticipate my needs before I even voiced them. My chaotic, impossible schedule. He didn't just manage it, he tamed it. We were on a high-stakes trip to Beijing, a deal that could make or break our year. I was ready for a tough negotiation, armed with translators and cultural advisors. Then Daniel, my supposedly simple assistant, starts speaking fluent Mandarin. Not just conversational Mandarin, but nuanced business-level Mandarin that had our Chinese clients completely captivated. He didn't just impress them. He charmed them. The deal was practically signed before we even got to the main course. And it wasn't just on big trips. Back in the office, he matched my brutal hours without a single word of complaint. While I was fueled by caffeine and sheer willpower, he was this constant, calm presence in the storm that was my life. Every morning, a coffee would appear on my desk, not just hot but the perfect temperature, with the exact amount of almond milk, no sugar. I never even told him how I liked it. He just knew. Files I was about to ask for, already organized and waiting. He wasn't just an assistant. He was an extension of my own mind, but better organized and infinitely more patient. He was the quiet hum of efficiency that kept my world from spiraling into total chaos. One afternoon, I was buried in a mountain of paperwork, trying to prep for a crucial meeting. Daniel walked in, calm as ever. "Your 4 p.m. with Senator Morrison is confirmed," he said, handing me a perfectly compiled briefing folder. I've included background on his new infrastructure bill, focusing on the points you'll want to challenge. "Your car will be ready at 3:45. Your dry cleaning was delivered this morning and is in your closet. And your sister called." He paused. "She wants to know if you're coming to her birthday dinner on Friday." I didn't even look up from my laptop. "Tell her I'll try," it was my standard response. A polite brush off for a life I no longer had time for. "With respect, Miss Hayes," he said, his voice firm but not unkind. "You said that last month for her anniversary and you didn't show up." She sounded hurt. I finally looked up, the words stinging. I bristled, my defenses immediately going up. Who did he think he was? My personal schedule is not your concern, Daniel. The air in the room grew thick. I expected him to retreat, to apologize. He didn't. Your schedule is exactly my concern, he countered, meeting my glare. And right now, your schedule is completely empty on Friday at 7 p.m. I could block it out for a family commitment, if you like. My mind went blank. No one. Absolutely no one. Talk to me like that. Not my board, not my clients, not my family. Employees who challenged me were shown the door before they could even finish their sentence. I should have fired him right there on the spot. The words were on the tip of my tongue. You're fired, but they wouldn't come out. Instead, something else did. Fine, I clipped out, the word feeling foreign in my mouth. Block it. He just gave a small, respectful nod and turned to leave my office. The silence he left behind was deafening. He was right. And that was the most infuriating part of all. As he reached the door, I found my voice again. Daniel? He stopped and turned back, his expression neutral. Yes, Miss Hayes. I took a breath. This was harder than closing $1 billion deal. Thank you. For a second, nothing. Then, his face completely transformed. A genuine, unguarded smile spread across his lips, reaching his eyes. It was like seeing the sun break through the clouds. You're welcome, Miss Hayes, he said, and for the first time I felt like I wasn't just his boss. I was a person. And maybe, just maybe, he was more than just an assistant. This was the moment I realized that the most valuable asset in my company wasn't a contract or a patent. It was the man who dared to tell me the truth. That Friday, I went to my sister's birthday dinner. It was awkward at first. I'd missed so much. But as the evening wore on, we laughed, we shared stories, and I remembered what it felt like to be a sister, not just a CEO. When I got home, there was an email from Daniel. The subject line was weak and brief, but inside it just said, I hope you had a good time. And I smiled. The dynamic between us had shifted. He was still my assistant, but he was also becoming my confidant, my anchor. He was the one who reminded me that there was a life outside the boardroom, a life that was worth scheduling. He started doing things that went beyond any job description. He'd leave a novel on my desk that he thought I'd enjoy, or a ticket to a concert for a band I'd mentioned offhand months ago. He wasn't just managing my schedule. He was managing my well-being. And I found myself relying on him for more than just logistics. I'd ask his opinion on strategy, on deals, on people. His insights were always sharp, always insightful. He saw things I missed, blinded by my own ambition. We were a team. An unconventional, unspoken partnership that was making me not just a better CEO, but a better person. One evening, we were the last two in the office, working late to close out a monstrously complex merger. We were both exhausted, running on fumes and leftover pizza. I was staring at a spreadsheet, the numbers blurring together. When he quietly said, "You need a break," I was about to argue, but he just gestured to the window. The city was spread out below us, a glittering tapestry of lights. We stood there in silence for a few minutes, just watching the world move below. "You've built all this," he said softly. "You should take a moment to actually see it." In that quiet moment, surrounded by the empire I'd fought so hard to build, I realized I wasn't alone at the top anymore. And for the first time in a long time, it didn't feel so lonely. That infuriatingly good assistant had somehow become my indispensable partner. The Tokyo trip changed everything. We were finalizing a major merger with a Japanese tech company, and the pressure was immense. 3 days of non-stop meetings, intense negotiations, and navigating complex cultural formalities. Daniel was my right hand, my indispensable partner through it all. He handled the translations with a fluency that impressed even our Japanese counterparts. He managed the labyrinthine schedule, ensuring we were always exactly where we needed to be. He even researched the intricacies of proper gift-giving etiquette, so we didn't make a single misstep. He was, in a word, perfect. On the second night, we finally collapsed into the plush chairs of the hotel bar. It was after midnight, and we'd just survived a grueling 14-hour day. I ordered a scotch, meat. The familiar burn was a welcome comfort. He ordered a whiskey on the rocks. The clinking of ice against his glass was the only sound for a moment. "You did well today," I finally said, breaking the silence. "The presentation you gave to Tanaka-san was flawless. You had him captivated." A small, tired smile touched his lips. "Thank you. But you're the one who actually closed the deal. That was masterful negotiating. The way you anticipated their every move. It was like watching a grandmaster play chess." I took a slow sip of my scotch. "I've been doing this for 15 years, Daniel. Experience is a tough teacher, but it's the best one. You'll get there." He didn't reply right away. Instead, he just studied me over the rim of his glass, his expression unreadable. "Can I ask you something personal?" he said, his voice a little lower than before. My guard went up instantly. "That depends on the question." "Why do you work so hard?" he asked, his gaze steady. "I mean, you've already built an empire. You could ease up, delegate more. You could actually enjoy your success." The question hit me with the force of a physical blow. No one had ever asked me that. Not my family, not my friends, not my past partners. They all just accepted the long hours and the constant travel as part of the package. They never questioned the why. I looked away, staring into the amber liquid in my glass. "When you grow up poor, Daniel," I began, the words tasting strange on my tongue, "success isn't just about the money. It's about security. It's about building a fortress so high that you're never vulnerable again, never dependent on anyone for anything." He was quiet for a long moment, letting my words hang in the air between us. "Is that why you're always alone?" The question was direct, almost brutal in its honesty. I should have shut him down. I should have told him it was none of his business, that he was crossing a line. But for some reason I didn't. Instead, I heard myself answer, the confession spilling out before I could stop it. "I'm not good at letting people in," I admitted. The vulnerability of the statement making my voice feel tight. Every relationship I've ever tried has failed. They can't handle the hours. They can't handle the constant travel. They can't handle the fact that my work will always be a priority. Eventually they all leave. I finished my scotch in one last swallow, the emptiness of the glass echoing the emptiness in my chest. He leaned forward slightly, his eyes full of an understanding I hadn't expected. "Maybe you just haven't met someone who understands that your work isn't separate from who you are. Maybe you haven't met someone who gets that it's a fundamental part of you." I let out a short, cynical laugh. "And you think someone like that actually exists? Someone who wouldn't see my ambition as a flaw?" "I know they do," he said, and his voice was so full of conviction, so certain, that it made me look up. Our eyes met across the small table, and in that instant, the entire world seemed to fade away. The quiet murmur of the bar, the distant city lights, the exhaustion of the day, it all dissolved. The air between us became thick, charged with an energy that felt like a live wire. It was more than just professional respect. It was something deeper, something I hadn't let myself feel in years. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic, unfamiliar rhythm. Then, my phone rang. The shrill sound shattered the spell, pulling me back to reality. A client emergency from halfway across the world. The moment was gone. I answered the call, my voice all business, the iron walls of my fortress slamming back into place. We finished our drinks, said our goodnights, and went to our separate rooms. But as I lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling of my silent hotel room, I couldn't get his words out of my head. I couldn't shake the memory of his eyes, of that electric moment that had arced between us. For the first time in a very long time, I felt a crack in my fortress. And I realized, with a terrifying jolt, that the biggest negotiation of my life might not have been with Tanaka-san, but with the man who had been sitting right across from me. The trip was over, but something new was just beginning. Back in New York, I tried my best to keep things professional, to maintain that invisible line between boss and employee. But it was no use. It's funny how you start noticing the little things when you're trying so hard not to. I started seeing the way Daniel's eyes would crinkle at the corners whenever he genuinely laughed. I noticed the unconscious way he loosened his tie at the end of a long, stressful day, a small gesture of surrender. I even began to recognize the quiet, almost inaudible tune he'd hum to himself while organizing files, a little melody of concentration. These were small, insignificant details, but they were chipping away at the professional wall I had so carefully constructed. Then, he started bringing me lunch on days I was too swamped to even think about eating. I'd be buried in reports, and suddenly, a container of something warm and delicious would appear on my desk. "You need to take better care of yourself," he said one evening, placing a box of Thai food next to my keyboard. The fragrant aroma of basil and chili filled my sterile office. I barely looked up from my screen. "I'm fine." He didn't budge. "You've had 3 cups of coffee and half a granola bar today. Eat." His voice was firm but not unkind. I bristled slightly, feeling exposed. "You're not my mother, Daniel." A small smile played on his lips. "No, but I am your assistant. And if you collapse from malnutrition, my job gets a lot harder." I couldn't help it. A laugh escaped my lips. It felt foreign after a day of tense meetings. "That's your concern? Job security?" He pulled up the chair opposite my desk and sat down, a move that was becoming more and more frequent. He wasn't just my assistant anymore. He was becoming a fixture, a confidant. "My concern is you," he said, his gaze steady and serious. "Is that so terrible?" The directness of his words, the way he looked at me right then, it sent a jolt through my system. My heart, which I thought was powered by caffeine and ambition, suddenly started beating for a completely different reason. It hammered against my ribs, a frantic, unfamiliar rhythm. "Daniel," I started, my voice barely a whisper, a warning to both of us. He knew what I was going to say. He knew all the reasons why this was impossible. "I know," he cut in softly, saving me the trouble. "Inappropriate. You're my boss." "I'm 7 years younger. It's a terrible idea." He stood up then, a hint of resignation in his posture. For a second, I thought that was it, the end of the conversation. But he paused, his hand on the back of his chair. "But that doesn't change how I feel." My breath hitched. I had to know. "How you feel?" He turned to face me fully, the bustling city lights of New York twinkling behind him like 1,000 unspoken thoughts. "Like I want to know everything about you," he confessed, his voice low and earnest. "What makes you laugh for real, not just the polite laugh you use in meetings? What you dream about when you finally let yourself sleep? What you were like before you built all these walls around yourself?" Each word was a gentle tap against my defenses, threatening to bring the whole fortress down. He took a step toward the door, then turned back one last time, his expression a mixture of hope and vulnerability. "I'll be outside if you need anything." And then he was gone, leaving me alone in the sudden deafening silence of my office. I sat there for what felt like an eternity, the Thai food growing cold on my desk, forgotten. My mind was a whirlwind, replaying his words, his gaze, the sheer audacity of it all. This was dangerous territory. He was my employee, my brilliant, kind, and incredibly perceptive assistant, and he was 7 years my junior. This wasn't just a bad idea. It was a potential scandal, the kind that could unravel the career I had spent my entire adult life building. It could shatter my professional reputation into a million irreparable pieces. Every logical part of my brain was screaming at me to lock the door, forget this conversation ever happened, and go back to the safety of spreadsheets and quarterly reports. But my heart, God, my heart wanted him. It wanted the man who saw past the boss, the woman who had forgotten how to eat lunch, and just saw me. And in that moment, I knew I was standing on the edge of a decision that would change absolutely everything. What would you have done? 2 weeks later, we flew to Paris for a week-long conference. Separate hotel rooms, professional boundaries firmly in place. Or so I told myself. The conference was at the prestigious Hotel Plaza Athene, a place that practically drips luxury. My suite was a dream, with a balcony that opened up to a perfect postcard view of the Eiffel Tower. Daniel's room was just down the hall. I tried not to think about that too much. The first 2 days were a blur of professional obligations. We went to meetings, we attended networking events, we endured long, formal dinners. We were the perfect team, the powerful CEO and her efficient, indispensable assistant. We maintained our roles flawlessly. I was Miss Vance, he was Daniel. Crisp, clean, and completely untouchable. But beneath the surface, something was simmering, a tension that was becoming harder and harder to ignore. Then came the gala on the third night. It was the centerpiece of the conference, a lavish affair held in the hotel's grand ballroom. I'd chosen a black evening gown for the occasion. It was simple, elegant, and sophisticated, designed to project an image of untouchable authority. When I stepped out of the elevator and into the lobby, Daniel was waiting for me. He was wearing a classic black tuxedo, and for a moment, I forgot how to breathe. He looked like he had stepped straight out of a James Bond film, all sharp lines and dangerous charm. He looked up as I approached, and his eyes did a slow sweep from my heels to my hair before meeting mine. "You look beautiful, Victoria," he said, his voice a low murmur that sent a shiver down my spine. It was the first time he'd used my first name since that night in my office. I felt a blush creep up my neck and fought to keep my composure. "You clean up well yourself, Daniel," I managed, hoping I sounded more composed than I felt. Inside the gala, we were instantly swept into the whirlwind of high-power schmoozing. We mingled with industry leaders, we charmed potential clients, we reconnected with old colleagues. Daniel was a master at this. He was charming, articulate, and utterly professional. He was the perfect representative for my company. But even as he worked the room, I felt his eyes on me. It was a constant, subtle pressure, a private conversation happening in a crowded space. Every time I glanced his way, I found him looking back. Around midnight, the heat and the noise of the ballroom became overwhelming. I needed a moment, a breath of fresh air. I slipped out onto a large terrace that overlooked the city. The cool night air was a welcome relief. The Eiffel Tower sparkled against the dark sky, a glittering diamond in the heart of Paris. The entire city was spread out below like a carpet of twinkling lights. It was breathtaking. "Incredible view," a familiar voice said from just behind me. I didn't even need to turn. Daniel. I felt his presence like a physical warmth at my back. I kept my eyes fixed on the horizon. "I wasn't looking at the view," he added softly. That's when I turned. He was standing close, far too close for an employee. The moonlight carved his features into sharp relief, and his eyes were dark and intense. There was something in his gaze that made my heart hammer against my ribs. "Victoria," he began, his voice thick with an emotion I couldn't name. "Don't," I cut him off, my voice barely a whisper. "Don't say whatever you're about to say? Because if you do, everything changes. I had to stop this." This was a line we couldn't cross. He took another step closer, closing the small gap between us. "Everything's already changed," he said, his voice firm, resolute. "You feel it too, I know you do." My professional armor, the one I had worn for years, was cracking. "You're my assistant," I said, trying to inject some authority into my voice, but it came out weak. "This is completely and utterly inappropriate." His response floored me. "Then fire me." I stared at him, dumbfounded. "What?" "Fire me," he repeated, his eyes never leaving mine. "Right now, say the words." "Then I won't be your assistant anymore. I'll just be a man who's falling in love with an incredible woman." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. My breath caught in my throat. Falling in love, it was absurd. It was impossible. "Daniel, you don't understand what you're saying," I stammered. my mind racing through all the reasons this was a terrible idea. The age difference, the potential scandal, my reputation. I don't care about any of that, he interrupted, his passion overriding all my logical objections. I care about you. The real you, not the Ice Queen CEO everyone else sees. The woman who cries during sad movies when she thinks no one's watching. The woman who anonymously pays for her staff's children's college educations. The woman who works herself to exhaustion because she's terrified of being vulnerable. Each word was a pinpoint strike, dismantling my defenses one by one. He saw me. He actually saw me. How do you know all that? I asked, my voice trembling. Because I pay attention, he said simply. Because I've spent the last 6 months learning everything I can about you. And I am so tired of pretending I don't feel this way. He stepped closer again, and this time, the space between our bodies vanished completely. I should have stepped back. I should have pushed him away, put a wall back up between us. I didn't. I couldn't. I was rooted to the spot, mesmerized by the raw honesty in his eyes. This is a mistake, I whispered, more to myself than to him. It was a last desperate attempt to hold on to control. Probably, he agreed, a small smile playing on his lips. But I'm willing to risk it if you are. A wave of conflicting emotions washed over me, fear, panic, but also a deep, soul-shaking longing. I don't know how to do this, I confessed, the admission feeling like a monumental surrender. How to be with someone. How to let someone in. Then let me show you, he whispered. He gently cupped my face in his hands, his touch warm and steady. He gave me every chance to pull away, to say no, to stop this train before it left the station. But I didn't move. I leaned into his touch. And when his lips met mine, the entire world fell away. The city, the gala, the company, my reputation, none of it mattered. There was only us, only this moment. Only the overwhelming, intoxicating feeling of finally surrendering to something I had been fighting with every fiber of my being for months. The kiss wasn't gentle or hesitant. It was a release of all the pent-up tension, a confirmation of everything that had been unspoken between us. It was fire and lightning and the sweet relief of coming home. When we finally broke apart, I was shaking, breathless. I looked into his eyes and saw my own chaotic emotions mirrored there. The choice was made. The line was crossed. There was no going back. Come back to my room, I said, the words tumbling out before I could second-guess them. He looked at me, a flicker of concern in his eyes. Victoria, we don't have to. I want to, I said, cutting him off with a certainty that surprised even me. God help me, I want to. The morning after, I woke up to the warm golden sunlight streaming through the windows, painting stripes across the crisp white sheets. Daniel's arm was wrapped securely around my waist, his breathing soft and even against my back. My heart hammered against my ribs. What had I done? This was Daniel. My assistant. The line, once so clear and defined, was now a blurry, tangled mess. Then, he stirred. His lips brushed against my shoulder, a feather-like touch that sent a shiver down my spine. I knew we couldn't ignore this. This huge, monumental thing that had happened between us. I took a deep breath. We should talk about this, I said, my voice barely a whisper. He shifted, his hand moving from my waist to gently trace circles on my arm. Okay, you start. I don't regret last night, I began, the words tumbling out before I could stop them. I don't. But I don't know what this means. You're still my assistant, Daniel. We still have to work together every single day. This could get incredibly, unbelievably complicated. I could already picture the sideways glances, the office gossip, the professional fallout. He was quiet for a moment, then said, "So we'll handle it, together." He propped himself up on one elbow, his dark hair falling across his forehead as he looked down at me, his eyes serious and sincere. "Victoria, I'm not asking you to marry me. I'm not asking you to go public or change your entire life. I'm just asking for a chance, a real chance, to see where this goes." To let yourself be happy for once. His words hit me like a physical blow. I don't know if I remember how to be happy. He leaned in and kissed me again. It wasn't like the passionate, urgent kisses from the night before. This was slow, tender, and full of a promise I was terrified to believe in. And as he kissed me, I felt something crack open inside me. They started to crumble. Dust and debris falling away, letting the light in for the first time. I'm scared, I admitted, the two words feeling utterly inadequate to describe the storm of emotions raging within me. Me too, he confessed, his thumb stroking my cheek. That was the moment everything changed. We spent the rest of that Sunday in Paris, a city that suddenly seemed brand new. We weren't a boss and her assistant anymore. We were just Victoria and Daniel. Two people exploring the city and maybe, just maybe, falling in love. We walked hand in hand along the Seine, the water sparkling under the midday sun. We stopped at a tiny sidewalk cafe, sipping strong coffee and laughing about nothing at all. He even convinced me to share a crepe, something my usual disciplined self would have scoffed at. And we kissed, right there in public, under the majestic Arc de Triomphe. Surrounded by the hustle and bustle of tourists, lost in our own private world. Later that evening, as we watched the sunset from the steps of the Sacre Coeur, the sky exploded into a breathtaking canvas of orange, pink, and purple. The entire city of Paris was spread out before us, glowing in the twilight. Like what? He asked, his arm tightening around me. Just been. I tried to explain. Not working, not planning, not strategizing my next move, just existing in the moment. Breathing. It felt foreign, but wonderful. He turned his head to look at me, his gaze intense. You should do it more often. You're allowed to have a life outside of work, Victoria. I looked up at him, a playful question on my lips. Is that what you are? My life outside of work? His expression turned serious, and my heart skipped a beat. I want to be your life, period. Inside work, outside work, everywhere. That single statement terrified me more than anything else. Back in New York, we tried to keep things professional at the office, but let's be honest, we failed spectacularly. It was all stolen kisses in the empty elevator, long lunches that had absolutely nothing to do with business, and the subtle brush of his hand against mine when he handed me files. But the thing that really got me was the way he looked at me during meetings. It was like the boardroom was empty, like I was the only person in the entire universe. It was intense, and it was making it impossible to concentrate on quarterly reports. One evening, long after the last employee had gone home and the city lights twinkled outside my office window, I finally said it. People are going to notice, Daniel. He just smiled, that easy, confident smile that always made my stomach do a little flip. Let them. I sighed, running a hand through my hair. Easy for you to say. You're not the CEO dating her much younger assistant. The gossip, the judgment, it'll all fall on me. He stepped closer, his expression turning serious. Then let's go public. Tell everyone. I don't want to hide this, Victoria. I don't want to hide you. But he didn't get it. You don't understand what that would mean for me, I tried to explain, the weight of my position pressing down on me. The board would question my judgment, my leadership. Clients would start to wonder if our relationship is affecting business decisions. Our competitors? They would have a field day with this, using it to undermine everything I've built. He took my hands in his gaze unwavering. Or, he said softly, people would see a strong, successful woman who's finally letting herself be happy, who found someone who loves her and supports her for who she is. The word hung in the air between us. You love me? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. He looked at me as if I just asked if the sky was blue. Of course I love you, he said, the certainty in his voice shaking me to my core. I've been in love with you for months. Since that first trip to Tokyo, if I'm being completely honest. Probably even before that. No one had ever said those 3 words to me with such absolute conviction. It wasn't a question or a hope. It was a statement of fact. And in that moment, all my defenses, all the walls I had so carefully constructed around my heart, just crumbled. "I love you too," I whispered back, the admission feeling both terrifying and exhilarating. "And that terrifies me." "Why?" he asked, his brow furrowed with genuine confusion. The vulnerability of the moment was almost too much to bear. "Because everyone I've ever loved has left me," I confessed, the old wounds feeling fresh again. "My father left when I was 10. My fiancé left me when my business started taking off, and I couldn't give him enough of my time. My best friend. She left because I missed one too many of her important events. Everyone leaves, Daniel. It's the one constant I've learned to expect. Everyone." He didn't say anything at first. He just pulled me into his arms, holding me so tightly it felt like he was trying to piece me back together. His embrace was a fortress against all my fears. "I'm not everyone," he murmured into my hair, his voice firm. "I know exactly who you are, Victoria. I know what you're really like when you're reconquering the world and when you feel like it is all falling apart. I've seen you at your absolute best and at your worst, and I'm still here." He pulled back just enough to look me in the eyes. "I'm not going anywhere." A single tear escaped and traced a path down my cheek. "Promise?" I asked, my voice small and fragile. He gently wiped the tear away with his thumb. "I promise." And in that moment, wrapped in his arms, I dared to believe him. I dared to hope that this time, just maybe this time, things would be different. 3 months, 3 perfect, secret months with Daniel. Then disaster struck. It was a Monday morning when my world imploded. Photos of us in Paris, so happy, so carefree, were plastered all over a business gossip site. There we were, kissing on a terrace with the Eiffel Tower in the background, walking hand in hand by the Seine. Someone had recognized me, the CEO of Hayes Innovations, and decided to cash in. The headline was brutal. CEO Victoria Hayes caught in romantic scandal with much younger assistant. My phone began to vibrate incessantly, a frantic drumbeat of doom. The board demanded an emergency meeting. Clients started calling, their voices dripping with faint concern. My competitors, I'm sure, were popping champagne. I was in my office, staring numbly at my laptop screen, scrolling through the comments section. Each word was a tiny poison dart. Gold digger dating the boss for career advancement. Cougar CEO in midlife crisis. Poor judgment. How can we trust her business decisions? The words swam before my eyes, a toxic soup of judgment and vitriol. The door creaked open, and Daniel walked in. He saw the look on my face, glanced at the screen, and immediately closed the laptop. "Don't read those," he said, his voice soft but firm. "How can I not?" I choked out, the words catching in my throat. "They're destroying my reputation. Everything I've built, Daniel. Everything." He knelt beside my chair, taking my hands in his. "Your reputation is built on 15 years of brilliant work, Victoria. On your integrity, your innovation. Not on who you're dating." His words were a balm, but they couldn't stop the panic clawing at my chest. "You don't understand," I whispered, pulling my hands away. "The board is furious. I have an emergency meeting tomorrow morning. They might force me out." "Then we'll fight it," he said, his eyes fierce. Together. The word together felt like a fantasy, a luxury I couldn't afford. "No." I stood up, needing space, needing to put a wall between us. This was a mistake. I should never have let this happen. I was weak. "Don't do this, Victoria. Don't let them do this to us." His voice pleaded with me, but all I could hear was the ringing of my phone, the whispers of the board, the death knell of my career. "You need to resign," I said, the words tasting like ash. "Effective immediately. It's the only way to minimize the damage. To show the board I'm taking this seriously." He stared at me, his expression a mixture of disbelief and hurt. "I'm not resigning." "Daniel, please," I begged, my voice cracking. This is my company, my life's work, is everything to me. I can't lose it. And I'm your life, remember? He shot back, his voice rising. You said I was your life. You can't just cut me out when things get hard. That's not how it works. I don't have a choice. I yelled, the sound raw and desperate in the quiet office. There's always a choice, Victoria, he said, his voice dropping to a dangerous low. You're just too scared to make the right one. That hit home. It was true. I was terrified. Terrified of losing the empire I had built from nothing, terrified of being seen as weak, as unprofessional. And in that terror I chose the path of least resistance. The path of self-preservation. Get out, I said, my voice cold and flat. Victoria. He started taking a step toward me. Get out. I repeated, louder this time, pointing at the door. You're fired. Leave your badge and your laptop with security on your way out. The look on his face, the utter devastation in his eyes, broke a part of me I didn't know could still break. But he didn't argue. He just nodded, slowly turned, and walked out of my office, out of my life. The moment the door clicked shut, the dam broke. I sank into my chair, buried my face in my hands, and for the first time in years, I cried. I cried for him, for us, and for the woman I had just become. The woman who sacrificed love for her company. Now, I have to face the board alone, and I have no idea if I made the right decision, or if I just made the biggest mistake of my life. Thanks for watching. Follow for the next chapter of the story. The emergency board meeting was brutal. The air in the room was thick with tension, so heavy you could almost taste it. 12 powerful executives, people I'd known for years, were sitting around that polished mahogany table, their faces like stone masks. They weren't just questioning my latest business decision. They were questioning my judgment, my leadership, my very character. It was board chairman Thomas Reynolds who finally broke the silence. His voice, usually so calm and measured, had a sharp edge to it. This relationship is a liability, he said, his eyes drilling into mine. You're the face of this company, Victoria. This kind of scandal reflects poorly on all of us. I held his gaze, refusing to be intimidated, even though my heart was hammering against my ribs. My personal life has never affected my professional performance, I stated, my voice coming out stronger than I felt. It's affecting it now, another board member, Miller, chimed in from across the table. Clients are concerned. Our stock took a significant hit this morning. The optics are terrible, Victoria. A CEO in a position of power with a much younger employee. The words hung in the air, dripping with accusation. I had to set the record straight. He's not my employee anymore, I clarified, my voice firm. I fired him. A ripple of murmurs went around the room. Reynolds slammed his palm lightly on the table. That's even worse. Now it looks like you're trying to cover it up. Or worse, like you used him and then discarded him when he was no longer convenient. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell them how unfair it all was, how they were twisting everything. All my worst fears, the ones that had kept me up at night, were materializing right here in this sterile, soulless boardroom. Everything I had worked so hard to build was slipping through my fingers because of a private matter they had no right to judge. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my composure. What do you want me to do? I asked, the question feeling like a surrender. Reynolds didn't hesitate. Step down. Temporarily. Just until this whole mess blows over. The words hit me like a physical blow. Step down? I repeated, my voice barely a whisper. From the company I built, the one I poured my life into, this wasn't just a job. It was my creation, my legacy. His next words were cold, a final, brutal checkmate. Or we'll vote you out, Victoria. The choice is yours. My eyes scanned the faces around the table, searching for an ally. For just one person who remembered the years of dedication, the sacrifices I'd made for this company. I looked at people I'd shared triumphs and crises with, people I thought were my colleagues, my friends. Only Sarah, the youngest on the board, met my eyes with a flicker of sympathy. But it wasn't enough. Sympathy wouldn't save me. I needed time. I couldn't make a decision like this with their predatory eyes on me. I need 24 hours, I said, my voice regaining a shred of its former authority. I need to consider my options. Reynolds gave a curt nod. You have until tomorrow morning at 9. I left the building in a complete daze. The familiar lobby, the security guards who greeted me every morning, it all felt alien. Like I was a ghost walking through someone else's life. I climbed into the back of my car, the leather seats offering no comfort. My driver, a kind man named George, looked at me in the rearview mirror, concern etched on his face. Where to, Miss Vance? I couldn't think. I couldn't breathe. Just drive, George, I managed to say. Just drive. As the city blurred past my window, a whirlwind of memories and emotions engulfed me. I remembered the early days, working out of a tiny office, fueled by cheap coffee and an impossible dream. I remembered the all-nighters, the deals I'd closed, the battles I'd won to get to the top. I had built an empire from scratch. And now, they wanted to take it all away. Not because I'd failed the company, but because I dared to have a personal life. The anger began to bubble up, hot and fierce, replacing the shock. Step down? Let them push me out of my own company? No, I wasn't a victim. I was a fighter. I had faced down corporate raiders, market crashes, and cutthroat competitors. I wasn't about to be taken down by a group of hypocritical suits in a boardroom. A plan started to form in my mind, a risky, audacious plan. They gave me 24 hours. They thought I would use that time to draft my resignation. They were wrong. I was going to use it to fight back. I picked up my phone, my fingers flying across the screen. My first call was to Sarah. I needed to know if her sympathy was just a fleeting emotion or something I could build on. The second call was to my personal lawyer, the sharpest legal mind I knew. I need you to dig into every single member of that board, I instructed her. I want to know everything. Their business deals, their personal lives, every skeleton in their closets. We're going on the offensive. As the car continued its aimless journey through the city streets, I was no longer dazed. After what felt like an eternity of driving, we ended up in Queens, pulling up outside a small, unassuming Italian restaurant. The warm glow from inside spilled onto the sidewalk, painting a picture of cozy intimacy. I sat in the car for a moment, just watching. Through the large front window, I could see Daniel. He was weaving between tables, a plate in each hand, laughing with a group of elderly customers. He looked so at ease, so genuinely happy. This was a side of him I'd never seen before, a world away from the polished, impeccably dressed assistant who anticipated my every need. This had to be it. This was his family's restaurant. The one he'd mentioned once, a long time ago, with a nostalgic smile. My heart was pounding, a frantic drum against my ribs. What was I even doing here? What was I going to say? But I knew I couldn't leave. I had to do this. Taking a deep breath, I got out of the car and walked towards the entrance. The moment I stepped inside, the aroma of garlic, fresh basil, and simmering tomato sauce wrapped around me like a warm hug. It smelled like home, a feeling I hadn't experienced in years. A small woman with lively, kind eyes and a welcoming smile immediately approached me. She wiped her hands on her apron. "Ciao, Bella, you must be Victoria. Danny's told me so much about you." I was taken aback. He talked about me to his mother? Sit, she insisted, gesturing to a small empty table in the corner. "I'll go get him for you." Before I could protest, she bustled away towards the kitchen, calling his name in rapid-fire Italian. A few moments later, Daniel emerged, wiping his hands on a kitchen towel. He was talking over his shoulder to someone in the back. Then he turned, and his eyes found mine. He stopped dead. The smile vanished from his face, replaced by a look of pure shock. He just stood there, frozen, as if he'd seen a ghost. The noise of the restaurant faded into a dull hum. It was just the two of us, locked in a silent stare across the room. I felt a lump form in my throat. I had to be the one to break the silence. Gathering all my courage, I stood up and walked towards him. "Can we talk?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. He just nodded, still looking stunned, and led me through the bustling kitchen and out a back door. We stepped into a small, surprisingly beautiful garden. Strings of fairy lights were draped between the brick walls, and pots of herbs and tomatoes lined a narrow path. The city noise felt miles away. I turned to face him, the cool night air doing little to calm the fire in my chest. "I'm sorry," I began, the words tumbling out. "I am so sorry for firing you, for pushing you away, for being so scared that I ended up hurting the one person in my entire life who actually seems to care about me." He listened, his expression unreadable. I had to tell him everything. The board meeting. It was a disaster. He raised an eyebrow. "They want me to step down. And honestly, maybe they're right. Maybe my judgment has been compromised. Maybe I've completely lost perspective on everything." He took a step closer, his gaze softening. "Or maybe," he said gently, his voice a soothing balm on my frayed nerves, "you've finally gained some." I looked at him, confused. "Victoria, you built an incredible company from nothing. You are absolutely brilliant at what you do, and no one can ever take that away from you. But you're also human. You're allowed to fall in love. You're allowed to have a life outside of that glass tower." My old defenses kicked in. "Not if it costs me everything I've worked for," I shot back, the words sharp with years of ingrained fear. "My company is my life." Daniel didn't flinch. Instead, he challenged me in a way no one ever had. "Is the company really everything? Because from where I'm standing, you look around you. You have no real friends. You've pushed away your family. You have no life outside those office walls. You've sacrificed everything for the sake of success, and you're miserable. Is that really winning?" His words hit me like a physical blow. No one had ever dared to be so blunt with me. But he wasn't wrong. I was powerful, I was successful, and I was profoundly miserably lonely. I had never, not once, thought of it that way. I'd always seen my sacrifices as necessary steps on the ladder to success. But what was the point of reaching the top if you were completely alone? My entire worldview was shifting on its axis. "I don't know how to do this," I admitted. The confession feeling like a weakness I couldn't afford. "I don't know how to balance everything. How to have a life and a career." He closed the remaining distance between us, taking my hands in his. His were warm and calloused, so different from the manicured hands of the executives I dealt with daily. "You don't have to do it alone," he said, his voice firm but kind. "That's what I'm here for. That's what love is, isn't it? Having someone to share the burden with, to help you carry the weight." A fresh wave of guilt washed over me. "They said terrible things about you in that meeting," I confessed, my voice thick with shame. "They called you a gold digger. They said you were just using me for my money and my position." To my surprise, he laughed. A genuine, carefree laugh that echoed in the little garden. "I don't care what they say," he said, shaking his head. "Let them think what they want. I know the truth. And you know the truth. I love you, Victoria. Not your money, not your position, not your company. You, the woman who works way too hard and always forgets to eat lunch. The woman who's brilliant and fierce and secretly one of the kindest people I've ever met. The woman who's terrified of being vulnerable but took a chance on me anyway." Every word was a dismantling of the walls I had so carefully constructed around my heart. Tears welled in my eyes. But for the first time in a long time, they weren't tears of sadness or frustration. They were tears of relief. "I love you too," I finally said, the words I've been so afraid of now feeling like the most natural thing in the world. "So much it scares me." He squeezed my hands. "Then be scared with me," he murmured. "We can be scared together. But please don't push me away again." In that moment, none of it mattered. Not the board, not the company, not the disapproving eyes of the world. I leaned in and kissed him, there in the quiet sanctuary of his family's garden, a deep, heartfelt kiss that said everything I couldn't put into words. It was a promise, a surrender. When we finally pulled apart, my mind was racing. His words had sparked something, a flicker of the old, defiant Victoria, the one who didn't back down from a fight. A new plan began to form, audacious and risky, but it felt right. "I have an idea," I said, a smile spreading across my face. He looked at me, his eyes full of curiosity and affection. "But it's risky, very risky." He smiled back, a conspiratorial grin that made my heart leap. "Tell me," and so I did. Right there, amongst the herbs and the fairy lights, I told him my plan to take back my life and my company on my own terms. And for the first time, I wasn't alone. Thanks for watching. The next morning, I knew what I had to do. I called an emergency press conference. I didn't even bother telling the board. Honestly, I didn't care what they thought anymore. The phone calls I got from them were absolutely furious, but I just ignored them. This was my life, my company, and I was going to handle this my way. I stood in front of a blinding sea of flashing cameras, a room packed with journalists, all hungry for a story. Daniel was right there beside me, a steady presence in the storm. I took a deep breath, looked straight into the cameras, and began, "Good morning. I'm here to address the recent stories circulating about my personal life. And I want to be perfectly clear, yes, I am in a relationship with Daniel Cooper. Yes, he was my assistant. And yes, there is an age gap between us. And no, I am not ashamed of any of it." A murmur went through the room. I let it die down before continuing, my voice firm and clear. "I have spent 15 years of my life building Hayes and Associates from the ground up. I poured my blood, sweat, and tears into this company, transforming it from a small startup into one of the most successful consulting firms in the entire country. I did that through hard work, relentless dedication, and sound business judgment. The details of my personal life do not and will not change any of that." I glanced at Daniel, who gave me a small, reassuring nod. I turned back to the press. Daniel Cooper is one of the most talented, hardworking, and brilliant people I have ever had the privilege of knowing. He has challenged me, he has supported me, and he has shown me a truth I had forgotten. That professional success means absolutely nothing if you have no one to share it with. He reminded me what it feels like to be truly happy. I know some of you will judge me. I know some of you will question my character, my decisions, my leadership. But I am done apologizing for finding happiness. I am done sacrificing my own personal life just to make other people feel comfortable with their outdated notions. I paused for effect, letting the weight of my words sink in. Effective immediately, Daniel is no longer my assistant. He has been promoted to Director of Operations. And let me be crystal clear, he has earned this position through his own merit, his incredible work ethic, and his proven capability to deliver outstanding results. Anyone who suggests otherwise is welcome to review his stellar performance records, which speak for themselves. And yes, we are together. We are a couple. If that is a problem for any of our clients or for any members of the board, then frankly, that is their issue to resolve, not mine. I will not apologize for falling in love. The room completely erupted. Questions were being shouted from every direction, a chaotic wall of sound. I simply ignored them all. I reached out, took Daniel's hand in mine, and we walked straight out of that room, leaving the pandemonium behind us. The elevator doors closed, shutting out the noise. The silence was deafening for a moment. "Well," Daniel said, a wry smile playing on his lips. "That was either completely brilliant or career suicide." I laughed, a real, genuine laugh that felt like a release. "Probably both," I admitted. "But I'm so tired of hiding. So tired of being afraid of what everyone else thinks." "What about the board?" he asked, his expression turning more serious. "They're not just going to let this go. They can accept it or they can fire me, I said, my resolve hardening with every word. Either way, I am done living my life according to other people's rules. This is my life now. As if on cue, my phone started buzzing relentlessly, call after call. I braced myself for the fallout, the angry voices, the cancelled contracts. But to my absolute shock, that's not what happened. Most of the calls were supportive. Clients I'd worked with for years called to say they respected my honesty and my courage. One of them, a CEO of a major tech company, said, "Victoria, your business acumen is what we pay for. Your personal life is your own. We're with you." I got messages from other female executives, some I knew, some I didn't, thanking me for standing up to the ridiculous double standard that women in power face every single day. Even a couple of my own board members called me privately, expressing their approval off the record. They admired the move, even if they couldn't say so publicly just yet. But of course, there was one person who was not among the supporters, Thomas Reynolds. When his name flashed on my screen, I knew this was the real fight. "Victoria," he said, his voice cold and clipped as soon as I answered. "You have put this board, this entire company, in an impossible position." I didn't flinch. "No, Thomas, you put me in an impossible position. You and the others who demanded I choose between my personal happiness and my professional life. I'm just letting you know that I'm done making that choice. The board will have to vote on this," he threatened, "on your future as CEO. "Let them," I shot back, my voice steady. "But you should know this. If you fire me, I will start a competing firm the very next day. And I will take at least half of our top clients with me. I build those relationships, and they are loyal to me, not to the Hayes & Associates name. Or you can accept that your CEO is a human being with a personal life, and we can all move on and continue making this company a massive success." There was a long, heavy silence on the other end of the line. I could almost hear the gears turning in his head, calculating the risks, the potential losses. Finally he spoke, his tone slightly less hostile. "You've changed, Victoria." "For the better, I think," I replied calmly. Another pause, it felt like an eternity. "I'll talk to the board," he said at last, his voice strained. "But you're on very thin ice." "I can live with that," I said, and a genuine smile spread across my face. I looked over at Daniel, who was watching me with a look of pure admiration. I had faced the storm and come out the other side, not just intact, but stronger. For the first time in a very long time, I felt truly free. I wasn't just the CEO of Hayes & Associates anymore. I was Victoria Hayes, a woman in love, a woman in charge of her own destiny. And whatever came next, I knew we would face it together. Thank you so much for joining me for this part of the story. It was a huge turning point, and I'm so excited to share what happens next. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss out on the next chapter. See you soon. Cocky for someone who's 7 years younger than me. He just laughed. And you love it. He was right, I did. I loved him. It had been a whirlwind 6 months. It wasn't an easy road. We lost some clients, people who couldn't see past the unconventional nature of our story. But for everyone that left, more arrived, drawn in by the surprisingly humanizing story of a CEO who chose love over a carefully crafted corporate image. The company, against all odds, was more successful than ever. Truly, deeply happy in a way I never thought possible. "I have something for you," Daniel said suddenly, breaking my train of thought. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. My heart did a flip-flop and then seemed to stop altogether. "Daniel," I breathed, my voice barely a whisper. He opened the box to reveal not a piece of jewelry, but a single, ornate key. "It's to my family's restaurant," he explained, his eyes sparkling. "My mom wants you to have it. She says you're family now." Tears welled up in my eyes, blurring my vision. "Family?" "She also said to tell you that Sunday dinners are now mandatory. You work way too much and you need to eat more." Apparently, I'm too skinny, and somehow that's your fault. A laugh escaped me, a genuine, bubbling laugh that came straight from the heart. I love your mother. She loves you too, he said, his expression full of warmth. Everyone does. Even my little sister stopped calling you the Ice Queen. I raised an eyebrow. Oh really, what does she call me now? He pulled me closer, his voice dropping to a playful whisper. Danny's better half. I leaned in and kissed him, pouring all the love and gratitude I felt into that one gesture. I'm not sure about better, I said against his lips. But I'm definitely the luckier half. He shook his head. We're both lucky. We found each other despite all the reasons we shouldn't have. Despite the age gap, the professional relationship, the timing, everything. He asked, intrigued. The 7-year rule. He looked puzzled for a second. As in, age gaps don't matter when you find the right person. A slow smile spread across his face. I like that, he decided. Though I personally prefer epic love story. That works too, I agreed, feeling my own smile mirror his. We finished packing in comfortable silence, the only sounds being the rustle of clothes and the occasional shared glance. In just a few hours, we'd be on a plane to Greece. 2 weeks of nothing but sun-drenched beaches, ancient ruins, and each other. The prospect was both exhilarating and slightly terrifying. As I zipped up my suitcase, he must have sensed my apprehension. Are you nervous? He asked gently. About the vacation? Terrified, I admitted. What if I'm terrible at relaxing? What if I forget how? He took my hands in his grip firm and reassuring. Then, I'll be there to catch you when you inevitably try to check your emails or draft a memo. That's what partners do. Partners. I liked the sound of that. It felt solid, real, and full of promise. I looked into his eyes, a sea of blue that held my entire world. I love you, Daniel Cooper. I love you too, Victoria Hayes, he replied without hesitation. Even when you're being a workaholic control freak. I feigned a look of offense. Especially then? He grinned, that irresistible boyish grin that always made my heart melt. Especially then. 1 year. It's funny how much can change in just 1 year. I remember standing in a room just like this 12 months ago, facing a barrage of cameras and microphones. The press, they weren't just reporting. They were dissecting, judging, crucifying. They painted me as the Ice Queen CEO, a ruthless shark in a designer suit. The narrative was set, the story was written, and I was the villain. But today, standing here again, it feels different. The air is still charged, but this time, it's with anticipation, not condemnation. And most importantly, I'm not alone. Daniel is right here beside me, his hand a warm, steady anchor in mine. The strength I feel from his touch is more powerful than any headline. Taking a deep breath, I step up to the podium. The familiar clicks and flashes start up, but they don't unnerve me anymore. I meet their gaze one by one. Thank you all for coming, I begin, my voice clear and firm. I have 2 announcements to make today. I pause, letting the words hang in the air, building the suspense. I can see the reporters leaning in, pens poised. First, I am thrilled to announce that Hayes & Associates is expanding internationally. We will be opening new offices in London, Tokyo, and Sydney. A murmur ripples through the room. This is big news, bigger than they expected. But I'm not done. To lead this global initiative, I've appointed a new Chief Operating Officer. Someone whose vision, dedication, and strategic brilliance are unparalleled. Please join me in congratulating Daniel Cooper. The cameras swing towards Daniel. He gives a modest nod, a small smile playing on his lips. He's never been one for the spotlight. But he handles it with a quiet grace that I've always admired. I watch him for a moment, this man who stood by me when the whole world seemed to be against me. He believed in me, not just as a CEO, but as a person. He saw the cracks in the Ice Queen facade and was unafraid of the woman underneath. He weathered the storm with me, and now we're about to enjoy the sunshine together. I let the reporters digest the first piece of news, the professional triumph, but the second announcement. This one is for me, for us. Second, I say, my voice softening just a little, and on a much more personal note. I raise my left hand, the simple elegant ring on my finger catching the light. It sparkles, a tiny star in a room full of flashes. Daniel and I got engaged last night. For a split second, there's a stunned silence. You could hear a pin drop, and then chaos erupts. The questions come flying, a cacophony of voices shouting over each other. Miss Hayes, the age gap. Mr. Cooper, how do you respond to the critics? Is this a conflict of interest? They're digging for the same old drama, the same tired narrative, but I'm not listening to them. I only have eyes for Daniel. He leans in close, his voice a low whisper just for me. Any regrets? I look into his eyes, the eyes that have seen me at my absolute worst, and my most broken, and still looked at me with nothing but love. I think back on the past year. The whispered gossip in boardrooms, the scathing articles, the sleepless nights spent wondering if I'd made a colossal mistake. Not just for my career, but for my heart. I think about the public humiliation and the private moments of doubt. And then I think about the laughter we've shared, the late-night strategy sessions that turned into conversations about our dreams, the quiet comfort of knowing I had someone in my corner no matter what. Not a single one. I whisper back, and I've never meant anything more. Because this last year taught me the most important lesson of my life. You can build an empire, you can conquer markets. You can have your name in lights. But success is hollow if you have no one to share it with. It's just an empty echo in a gilded cage. Building an empire is impressive, I won't deny that. I'm proud of what I've accomplished. But building a life? A real, messy, beautiful life. Filled with love and laughter, and someone who challenges you to be better every single day. That's everything. That's the real prize. I know people will still talk. The whispers won't vanish overnight. Some will still judge our age difference, our relationship, our choices. They'll call it a scandal, a power play, a mistake. Let them. I've spent too much of my life worrying about what other people think. Trying to fit into the narrow box society builds for a successful woman. No more. I've learned that their opinions are just noise. What matters is the truth I found right here, holding Daniel